Do you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
Hello and welcome to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Staci.
And I'm your co-host, Sarah.
Today we will be having an interview with Tyson Brown, who will be talking to us about intermittent fasting. Thank you for joining us, Tyson. We'd love our listeners to learn a bit more about you, so could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. Okay, so I guess I'll start off with my accent. So I'm from Australia. I'm from the top part of Australia, which is not as civilized as the bottom part. So we're a bit more country up there. But basically, I'm a young personal trainer in Australia. I've been doing it now for over, I would say, probably about 6 years. And when I was growing up, I was that overweight kid who I was never able to lose weight, and I struggled with doing like the bodybuilding diets, eating the chicken breasts and the broccoli and all those things, and they did help me lose weight, which was awesome. But the thing is, I developed an unhealthy relationship with food going into that process, because I was like, oh well, I've got to eat like this for the rest of my life. And I started there was negative associations with, let's say, like bad foods, and then my family wouldn't want to take me to dinner because I wouldn't be able to weigh my food. I would stress about what I was going to eat. Like, it got to a really, really bad place. And I knew there had to be something different. Like, I'm like, okay, this is not right. How can I still be able to live a lifestyle and hang out with my friends, but not be so strict and diligent about this food? And so that's when which is why I reached out to you girls to talk about the book that I've written, is Ditch the Diet, because I realized intermittent fasting, when I came across it, isn't a diet per se. And when I found out about it and I started following it, and I realized that I wasn't gaining weight and I still was able to eat, like, let's say, the foods I enjoyed, I was like, whoa, like, this is completely different to what I've ever learned before and to what everyone else has told me. Like, this is the complete opposite. And ever since practicing that and then having other people try it too and help them achieve their results, like, I knew that I needed to teach more people about the intermittent fasting approach, which is kind of what my expertise is, I guess you would say, around that area when it comes to health and fitness.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit more about intermittent fasting for people who might not be as familiar with it? What does that process look like?
Yeah, so I guess like maybe in 2016 it probably started trending a lot with people type of thing. Like there are all the diets that go up and down, but intermittent fasting isn't a diet per se. It's more of like a lifestyle approach in the way you eat, right? Because you're not saying, if I'm doing intermittent fasting, you don't associate any foods with intermittent fasting. You associate a time where you are eating during the day and a time where you're not eating during the day. And that is like the basic simple premises. So just think about certain times you are eating, certain times you aren't eating. And everyone practices some type of intermittent fasting on a daily basis. When you stop eating dinner and you go to bed and then you wake up for breakfast, you've done just an 8 or 10 hour fast most likely.
Right. Do you have, when you talk to people, do you specify a certain amount of time for fasting, or is that up to each person? Is everyone different in the time?
Look, usually the benefits, which I'm sure we'll go into later, start around the 16-hour mark, right? Which is why I always advocate people to go for 16 hours without food. But, at the start, if someone's not ever used to that, I will get them just starting with a 12 or a 14-hour fast to gradually work into the process of doing that 16 hours. Because it's just like anybody who goes into a diet, and then the reason they fail is because it's so strict. If I say, hey, you have to eat, you can't eat for 20 hours a day, how many people are going to want to stick with that in the long run? Not very many. So it's just about that gradual approach of saying, all right, let's try 12 hours, let's try 14, let's try 15. And it's just that small approach until people can figure out what works best for them. And then that can be anywhere from 16 hours minimum up to 20 hours if they want to do that.
Okay.
So can you tell us a bit, what are the benefits for doing intermittent fasting?
So I think the biggest benefit is weight loss for people, right? And it's not because intermittent fasting is some magical pill that's going to completely transform everything. It's just because you're able to stay in a bigger calorie deficit with the weight loss since you have a shorter amount of time to eat. So if you imagine, let's say you're supposed to eat 2,200 calories in a day. If you can only eat that 2,200 calories in, let's say, 6 to 8 hours compared to waking up for breakfast and then your last meal is at 8 o'clock, you could be eating for over 12 hours a day. So the biggest benefit is just being able to reduce the amount of time you have to eat and then put you in a calorie deficit. But apart from that, there are a lot of other benefits out there. So a lot of people notice that they're more focused, they have more productivity when they're actually, not eating or they're not thinking about food. Because when we are digesting food, the blood is going to our stomach, right, to get that digestion going. So that means you don't have as much blood flow to your head, which means you aren't thinking as straight. Especially, I'm sure people know after they have a big lunch, they're like, oh, I'm ready for a snooze now, and it's just because that blood flow is being diverted away from your head. So increased focus, increased productivity, fat loss, and there are a lot of other benefits that come along with it that I don't want to dive too much into the science, but there's something called cell autophagy, and that means basically the recycling of bad cells and being replaced for good cells. So there have been claims, there's research out there, but not a lot backed up by this could actually help with cancer, like get rid of old cancer cells and be replaced with new healthy cells too. However, I'm not going to say that's a sole benefit because it actually hasn't been backed up yet.
Right. Okay. How about on the opposite end of the spectrum? Are there concerns or things to keep in mind in this process that you should be aware of?
Oh, yeah, for sure. So if you have let's say you have an eating disorder and you have a problem with just getting enough food in as it is, you probably shouldn't be doing this diet because, if you're eating 300 calories or 500 calories a day, something ridiculous, and then you're trying to add intermittent fasting on top of this, that is just setting you up for disaster, and that's going to ruin your metabolism. It's going to affect your thyroid health. It's going to affect everything. So if you are someone who has an eating disorder, I would highly recommend that you do not do this diet. If you're someone with a small appetite, and if you can stick to eating 2,200 calories a day, and you're eating in a 12 or 13 hour window, then you don't have to do it. Because if you have a small appetite and you can be satisfied with small meals during the day, the same thing, then intermittent fasting may not be for you because you might be severely unrestricting your calories, right? Which is a big problem. Then there's, when it comes to pregnancy, clearly you need to be feeding yourself and you need to make sure that your baby's got enough energy, enough fuel too. So I would never ever recommend a pregnant woman follow intermittent fasting either.
Okay. Is there any sort of common misinformation that people often think about intermittent fasting that you want to sort of debunk?
Yeah, I think the one thing that people still ask me all the time is how long until your metabolism slows down from intermittent fasting or things like that. And to be honest, your metabolism will not slow down with intermittent fasting if you're eating. This goes back to, again, making sure you're getting enough food in during the day, because we're technically designed to go for periods of time without food. I mean, we never just walked up to a woolly mammoth, cut him open and decided, and just cut him open and had a feed whenever we could. There were times in our life when we couldn't eat food. So it is completely adaptable and there is no risks with your metabolism slowing down or anything like that, as long as you're getting enough food. Now, if people go for longer periods of fasting, 32, 72 hours, those type of things, then you're getting into different territory, which is what I don't touch, because those long-term water fasts, just things like that, they're not used as a weight loss. They shouldn't be used as a weight loss strategy, and that's what most people are usually focusing on intermittent fasting for. And another thing when it comes to a myth that people think of too when it comes to slowing down the metabolism, if you lose weight on any diet, your metabolism will slow down, and it's simply because you're lighter. The lighter you are, the less your body has to work over time. So you will have a slowdown of your metabolism, whether you're doing intermittent fasting, whether you're just doing a low carb or high fat, whether you're doing anything. When you lose weight, your metabolism will slow down just because it doesn't have to work as hard.
Okay, I'm going to jump in here so that we can take a break because it's that time of the podcast. When we come back, Tyson will be talking more about intermittent fasting, especially other kind of diet fads right now, such as keto, paleo, those types of things, and whether they should be used in conjunction with fasting. So stay tuned. You're listening to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, and we'll be right back.
Still on the search of that one true love? On the limbo in this crazy world of dating, marriage, relationships? Well, Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Relationship Podcast, your one-stop podcast for everything about relationships.
Welcome back to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast. We are talking today with online coach Tyson Brown about intermittent fasting. So let's go ahead and get back to that interview. Okay. And then there's all of these, I don't want to call them fads, but they're very popular right now, things like keto and paleo. Do people combine different things with intermittent fasting? Would you recommend that, or would you tell people to steer away from combining those types of diets?
Look, at the end of the day, if they want to do it, they can if they want, but my big thing is, this is not supposed to be a diet. Like I said, it's supposed to be a lifestyle choice. So if you're doing, keto, I just personally think it's short-term results, but long-term unsustainable. And it's just why would you not want to have your carbohydrates, right? You can have carbohydrates, sweet potatoes, things like that, and still be able to lose weight. So if you want to add, if you're doing keto and you're like, you know what, I'm going to do intermittent fasting, my question for you is, why do you want to add those two together? This is not going to make it some super weight loss pill that's going to magically help you drop all the weight. I mean, sure, it might, but it's also got to be sustainable for you too. And this is why I'm a big advocate of intermittent fasting as a lifestyle, not a diet, because like I said, you can still eat all the food you enjoy. Not all the time, not whenever you want, because calories are still important, but you can still go out, and let's say if you're going to go out for drinks with a friend the Friday night, if you make your fasting period longer, you just have a small meal before you go out, then you can have, let's say, extra calories to go and have your drinks and enjoy it with friends and family without saying, nah, I'm on a diet, I can't drink, I can't have that piece of chocolate, I can't do it, I can't do those things. I just feel like that's not sustainable in the long run, because it wasn't for me when I was younger, and I know a lot of my clients don't want to give up their fun lifestyle with friends and family just so they can lose some weight and look great with a six-pack, you know?
Okay. So beyond the amount of time that they're fasting, is there anything that people would need to sort of change to be individual from one person to another?
It could be the timing. It could actually be, some people might do better with doing, it's called alternate day fasting. So let's say there's the diet called the 5-2 diet. So 5 days during the week you eat normally, but on 2 days you severely restrict yourself, right? So let's say for men it's about 800 calories, and for women it's 600 calories. And some people just like to do, you know what, I'm only going to do fasting twice a week and eat normally on my other times a week. And that's just that's another approach people can take too. So it doesn't really matter you've got to find out what works for their lifestyle, because some people are just like, you know what, I don't want to do the 16-8 or the 18-4 every day. I would rather do something where maybe twice or three times during the week, I just do a complete different fast. Like for me, I will do a 24-hour fast. I'll do 16-8 from Monday to Saturday, and then Saturday at 3 p.m. until Sunday 3 p.m. I'll do a 24-hour fast once a week too.
Okay. You talked a little bit at the beginning about your book, Ditch the Diet. So can you tell us a little bit more about the book, and then things like when does it come out, where can people find it, etc.?
Yeah, so Ditch the Diet, the book was written because I wish it was something that I read when I was younger, because I always, I thought, oh yeah, I want to, do the bodybuilding stuff. I want to get lean and shredded. But then I realized how unsustainable that is in the long run. So I read this book to say, you know what, you don't have to diet to lose weight, and you don't have to neglect all the things you enjoy. So it's all about that. It's teaching people who are short on time how they can work out, and also just how to integrate health and fitness into their lifestyle. Because the biggest thing is, I think a lot of people think health and fitness is over here. I go to the gym, I eat healthy and all that stuff, and then I see my friends, I see my family, I do work. It's all over here. But you need to integrate that, because it's health and fitness is a part of your life no matter what. And so I teach people how to do that. The book doesn't have a confirmed release date yet, but it will be coming out in the next few months. Pretty much I'm I'm just trying to find a good title. Not a title, a good title page. I want it to make it look nice and pretty for everyone out there, so they can go, oh, that's a nice book. I want to get that one. But if they want to get a free chapter of diet, they can go to www.tysonbrown.com.au/ditch the diet, and they get a free chapter of the book, and then they'll be notified when it actually does come out.
Okay.
And you mentioned also that you do coaching. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so with the online personal training, the reason I've started doing that is because anybody can Google a workout. Anybody can Google, like a diet. They can Google intermittent fasting. They can download my free cheat sheet and follow it. They can do all those things. But a lot of people, I felt like, don't have the accountability to be able to stick to something. And that's why I really think the online coaching is really important, because not only do people get a personalized nutrition program and a personalized workout program, but they get that accountability of me checking up on them and saying, hey, what are we working towards this week? How's the progress going? If they get stuck somewhere and they have a question, I'm there to answer it in real time. And that's the best thing about the online, is I can help people all over the world, whatever time it is, answer their questions and keep them on track. And that's why, the online coaching has been so beneficial for so many people, because it's not like here's a meal plan that you have to follow. It's, okay, let's understand how you're going to fit the food you enjoy into your diet, and how to understand what foods are made up of too. So it's not just that coaching process, it's actually the education process that goes behind it too, to teach people how they can do this by themselves. Because you're not going to want a trainer forever, but you need to be able to have the basics understanding of how to do things by yourself when you don't have a trainer too.
Okay. I'm going to ask the somewhat rude question, but the one that people are going to ask when it comes to coaching and training. How much does online coaching cost?
Okay, I'm not going to talk about... No, I'm just joking. So it's $50 a week Australian, which comes to about $37 a week American, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
So you guys get the good end of the bargain if you did that type of thing.
Okay.
And people would go to your website for that?
Yeah, they can go to my website, or they can reach out to me. I'm pretty all over the place on Instagram. Like, that's where I spend a lot of my time doing my stories. So if they send me a direct message at Tyson the Trainer with 2 R's, and they say, hey, like I heard you on the podcast, want to know about coaching, or if they have any questions, best place would be to DM me on Instagram.
Okay. And so you've mentioned Instagram, you've mentioned your website. Give us your website again, and then tell us if you're on any other social media and where people can find you there.
My website is tysonbrown.com.au, and same thing as Instagram, it's Tyson the Trainer with 2 R's. They're probably the 2 biggest places that I'm active on at the moment. And if you guys actually go to tysonbrown.com.au/IF for intermittent fasting, I've got a free cheat sheet that has over 40 tips on how to fit into your lifestyle, and it's just something you can download for free.
Okay. We have pretty much covered all the questions that we had. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't touched on, but that you really want people to know about intermittent fasting, or just diet and exercise in general, nutrition in general?
Yeah, I think one thing I want to share is, even though I'm such a big advocate of intermittent fasting, that's my belief, that's what I want to teach people, it's not going to work for everyone. And if it doesn't work for you, don't stress about it, because you're going to find something out there that works for you at the end of the day. And it's not a secret bullet. There's no magic pill out there. Whatever you're following, you've still got to... It's all about the calorie control, right? You can be doing intermittent fasting and you might not lose weight, and you might think it's not worth it, but at the end of the day, it's probably because you're still eating too much food. And so... I just want to make that point so clear to people, that they think that if they go on this diet or if they do follow this eating plan, it's going to be the magic trick, and then they don't see results. And it's just because they're most likely eating too much. It's like the people who snack on high amounts of nuts and peanut butter and all those things. If you do that while you're doing intermittent fasting, there's going to be no difference in the weight loss. So any diet's going to work for you. You just need to make sure that you're in that calorie deficit. And if intermittent fasting doesn't work for you, do not beat yourself up, because there are plenty of other things out there that you can follow.
And then you made me think of something else. Obviously, people still need to move. They still need to exercise in some ways. But what do you recommend when people are doing intermittent fasting in terms of exercise? Does it affect your exercise in terms of, if you've been fasting for 16 hours, should you eat first and then exercise, or what do you recommend?
That's a really good question. I'm actually glad you brought that up, because I totally blanked on that one. A lot of people... because we're used to having food, most people probably are used to having food in their stomach when they work out. So what you're going to realize is you're going to have a slump in energy at first, because your body is not going to know. Your body's like, whoa, like, where am I going to get my energy from? Because it's starved of, from you being fasting so long. So that means your body's not really going to be certain of what to do. So if you're going to start exercising on an empty stomach, keep it light first. Start with your morning walks and maybe just a light jog or some lighter weights until you train your body to be able to train without food. Now, for me personally, I just like to train without food in my stomach because I feel lighter. I don't feel like there's anything, in my stomach. I don't feel like I'm just heavy. So, especially when it comes to me doing chin-ups, the biggest excuse I have is like, oh God, this is going to be terrible. I've got food in my stomach. But so I like to exercise without food. But some people, they need something. So you might do your 16-hour fast, have a banana or something light, and then go into your workout. But there's no hard and fast rule as to whether you should train fasted or whether you should train fed. It all depends on the person. And this is another big myth. A lot of people think they're going to lose muscle mass if they train on an empty stomach. As long as you train on an empty stomach and then you eat afterwards and you get some protein in your diet, you're completely fine.
All right. Well, Tyson, we want to thank you for being on the show today. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
No, just make sure you guys follow me on Instagram because I do some pretty funny shit on there.
Okay, good to know. Thank you so much.
So we'd like to thank Tyson Brown once again for being on our show. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about our own experiences with intermittent fasting. So stay tuned.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
So once again, we want to thank our guest, Tyson Brown, for being on the podcast, from Australia, which is awesome. It's always interesting to do international interviews because for him, it's 17 hours ahead, so we were calling the future, sort of. So, Staci, in terms of what we just talked about with intermittent fasting, is it something that you'd heard about before this interview or knew anything about?
I had heard of it, but I guess I heard of it strangely because I kind of thought it was a on-off day thing. Like, fast one day, don't fast one day, fast one day, don't fast one day.
I've heard of that too. I don't know if it has a different name though.
Yeah.
I've actually been doing it for a couple of weeks now, not because of this, but completely unrelated.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing it. My husband's been doing it for about a month, and it's not as terrible as it sounds. The first day, like I eat between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And the first day, that morning at work, just about killed me because my body was like, "Hi, why aren't we eating?" But it gets a lot easier, and so it's interesting to just kind of eat in that 6-hour window. Yeah, and I was laughing when he said he doesn't see the benefit of doing keto with it or another. I actually do know people who swear by doing keto in addition to intermittent fasting, but I think again that's what works for each individual. You know? I don't necessarily want to give up carbs for the rest of my life. Some carbs are so good.
Carbs, I eat way too many carbs. But I'd been doing intermittent fasting without knowing what it was for a while, just because I wasn't working at the time. And so I didn't wake up until a certain point. And so then that would be my first meal at like 11. And then the only thing was my family kind of tries when we're trying to be healthy of like, don't eat after 7 or 7:30. So I was doing this whole 11 to 7 eating thing, but without meaning to. That was just how my schedule was working.
Right.
And maybe it's because I was sleeping late. So it wasn't that hard for me because I was asleep until basically I wanted to eat. I didn't have to, be awake and around people who might also be eating before I could eat. So
Right. That's funny. I didn't mean to do it, but I did.
I did it really well without meaning to.
And I'm not. I've just started, so it's not like I've been doing it for a couple weeks and oh my gosh, I've lost 80 pounds. Nothing like huge like that. But I do notice that I have more energy. Mm-hmm. I'm still not a morning person. I don't think there's any cure in the world that will make me a morning person. But I do notice that I have a lot more energy in the afternoons, and that kind of 3 p.m. slump or whatever time that is for people. So that's been nice, and we'll see. It's something that I don't know if I will. I don't see a reason not to do it forever, but then
right.
Who knows as things go on and things change. But for right now, doing okay.
Yeah. I mean, I did it pretty well when I wasn't even thinking about it, but I noticed that I was eating less just because I was eating in a less amount of time, but I also wasn't doing a lot. So I feel like if I did it now and then also did exercise, right. I might struggle a bit more than I had before because at the time I was just home all day.
Right. Watching your stories.
No. Reading my stories.
Yeah, exactly. I think my concern right now, I'm in a very controlled environment because I'm home, but we haven't done things like where my husband and I have gone on vacation, or I've gone home. My family's all in Montana, and for some reason my sister and I have talked about this. When I go home, all I want to do is eat. It's like I just wander through my mother's kitchen. I don't know if it's a comfort thing,
right?
So that will be my first major test, going to mom's house.
The thing that concerns me about it is if your day kind of gets all wonky, or if you're traveling and then your hours are off. Right. And so if it's like you normally do like 11 to 7, but hey, you're traveling and you couldn't eat during the regular hours you would eat. And then it's like, hey, it's 8:30, but you haven't really eaten in like 6 hours.
Right.
It's like, yeah.
I think there's probably some wiggle room in there. My other thing is that we have friends who, they eat really late.
Yeah.
If I'm done eating at 7 and they're like, hey, come over for dinner, we're eating at 9, it's like,
yeah.
Oh, well, you probably, if you knew it was coming, if it wasn't a last minute thing, you could probably adjust your
right.
your schedule so that you adjust your
right.
your schedule so that you started eating later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do that with my family. My family for like holidays all likes to eat earlier, and my sister and I, because we're younger, we're just like, so we're totally used to eating at like, 9, 10, whatever in college. We want to eat at 4? Really? And so we definitely have to plan ahead of, okay, you want to eat then, but I'm so used to eating like 3 hours later than this, and my body's going to be like hungry then. Right. So let me not eat as much as I would right now and sort of space that out a bit more, because you're throwing my schedule. Stop throwing my schedule off, family.
My grandparents used to eat dinner at 4 every day.
I don't know.
4 o'clock. But I think they woke up a lot earlier, too. They went to bed
and
got up earlier.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
As opposed to me.
Anyway, intermittent fasting, it's interesting. I'm wondering, people out there in the universe, if you've tried it, let us know what you think. Has it worked for you? Do you hate it? Do you love it?
Any tips you might know that we didn't talk about today?
Mm-hmm. Let us know. Instagram. Let us know on social media. Twitter and Facebook. So, yeah. Thank you for joining us.
All right. And we'll see you next time on the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.